Coming up, a new Department of Agriculture in North Carolina, subsistence rights in Alaska, and Season 2 of Rutherford Falls premieres this month. I'm Mark Trahant. Aaliyah Chavez is away. Join us for those interviews plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. Working with award-winning professors, Cronkite students learn news reporting, social media, shooting and editing videos, and producing content for communications industries. Cronkite's 15 professional programs give students the opportunity to cover critical issues throughout the U.S. and beyond. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Thank you for joining us. Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland has tested positive for COVID-19. The Laguna Pueblo citizen is said to be experiencing mild symptoms from the virus, according to the Department of Interior. She last tested negative on Monday during a visit to the White House and was not in close contact with President Joe Biden. The Interior Secretary is fully vaccinated and twice boosted. She says she is confident she will make a swift recovery. Haaland is encouraging everyone to stay current on their vaccinations so that if they are exposed, they too will have milder symptoms. Secretary Haaland canceled her West Coast travel and is isolating per CDC guidance while working remotely. The Department of the Interior is conducting contact tracing and will notify those she may have been in close contact with. $147 million in grants are being awarded to tribal communities. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development announced the funding last week. These annual funds will go towards block grants that support affordable housing and community development projects. The Indian Housing Block Grant Competitive Program will divide $95 million between 24 communities. Plus, another $52 million is being awarded to 59 communities through the Indian Community Development Grant. The projects are varied. The Cook Inlet Tribal Council is using its $800,000 grant to build a 45,000 square foot facility. This new building will provide childcare and youth workforce and economic development programs in Anchorage, Alaska. Other nations will use the funding for new construction of new units, adding infrastructure and community development. In Canada, a new housing project for Indigenous youth in care, or those aging out of the system in Manitoba, is now complete after undergoing renovations. The apartment building in Winnipeg's North End used to be a burned-out abandoned building. It's now been renovated into 18 units and will give affordable housing to 24 Indigenous youth in care or who are aging out of care. APTN's Darnell Stranger has the detail.
This building comes from a place of love. This comes from a place of love, and everything that we've done to do this and to bring this building to life comes from our heart.
This apartment building in Winnipeg's North End used to be a burned-down, abandoned building. But now it's been renovated into 18 units and will give up to 24 Indigenous youth in care or aging out of care affordable housing.
The youth are the most important people. They are why we do this. And we are so very grateful to have been able to bring this idea to life through the opportunities that we receive through our funding. With that support, we can bring our big ideas and create something like this, and our youth are the ones that are going to benefit. It doesn't matter what we think or what we want, it's what they need, and that's what we want to center by doing this project.
The building was bought by Shawinigan Abenujee after they received $3 million from the federal government's Rapid Housing Initiative. A part of the Southeast Tribal Council, they serve 8 First Nation communities in southern Manitoba. Tatiana Monkman-Hudson has been accessing services provided by Shawinigan Abenujee since she aged out of care at 21.
It's been a positive impact, and they've helped me out through so much. And when I was transitioning out of care, they were a big support and still continue to be. They've been a continuous support to this day, and I want to continue to use it, and how do you say that? Like use the resources in the community. Yeah, and yeah, they've actually taught me like how to be a powerful leader.
The building will also have a cultural space, computer area, and various programming rooms. Tenants are expected to move in this month. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And in Oklahoma, the Cherokee Nation is also supporting youth as they age out of its foster care system. In May, the nation announced its pilot program, Fostering Hope. It includes a $500,000 monthly stipend for Cherokee youth through their 21st birthday, and a one-time COVID-19 impact payment of $1,000 will go to the nation's more than 80 foster families. The funding comes by the way of the tribe's Respond, Recover, and Rebuild COVID-19 relief initiative. Participants will receive financial literacy training and will meet with a counselor. Chuck Hoskin Jr. is the principal chief for the Cherokee Nation. Hoskin says aging out of foster care is one of the most challenging things anyone can face. The pilot program begins in June and runs through 2024. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, meet the writer behind Rutherford Falls and fishing rights are challenged in Alaska. But first, a new Department of Agriculture. Stay with us. The Lumbee tribe now has a Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. The new department will direct programs regarding farming, natural resources, conservation, and food sovereignty. Chairman John Lowry joins us from Pembroke, North Carolina. Welcome, Chairman Lowry.
Thank you, sir. It's mighty nice to be with you today. Thank you.
So how did this department get started?
Well, I will tell you this. In my past life, I worked at the United States Department of Agriculture. And so what I've seen there, what I've seen other tribes doing, when I've seen the move around food sovereignty and food security, I knew that that was something that, that once elected as chairman of the tribe, that I wanted to push. I wanted to push for us to have a focus on agriculture, for us to help our farmers and our ranchers. And so that was the beginning of it, was understanding and knowing what other tribes were doing in this realm, and understanding that there was a great opportunity for us as Lumbees to create this office and to work closely with our farmers and ranchers.
Maybe describe the lands we're talking about for viewers.
Yes, sir. Well, here in North Carolina, we have a very strong tradition of agriculture among the Lumbee. Currently, we do a lot of row crops here. We do wheat, soy, and corn. Are our biggest crops that our farmers are doing. We used to be very big into tobacco as well, but we have a very flat land. We have a very good climate for different agriculture, and so and we do have a lot of farmers. As I said before, we have a lot of individuals who are doing things in the agriculture realm.
Will this new department help market Lumbee products?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One of the things that I did, Mark, was after I was elected and sworn in. After I was sworn in January, I put together an advisory committee, a temporary advisory committee of local farmers. They came together. They met 3 times, and these were individuals who cover many different avenues within the agriculture realm. And they met, they discussed what could a tribe do? What steps could we take in order to better assist them? And so they are the ones who said, hey, we would like to see the creation of an agriculture department. And so with that agriculture department, we will help them with marketing. We will be in a position to help them with different certifications around food safety and food security. We will also be able to connect them with resources at the state level through the state Department of Agriculture, and also at the federal level with the USDA.
Chairman, I'm interested in something you mentioned, and that's the transition going on with tobacco. How is that manifested with your community?
Well, we used to be very, very big into tobacco, and in the 90s, early 2000s, there was the tobacco buyout, and so a lot of our farmers were able to participate in the tobacco buyout, which pretty much meant that they had to figure out a way to diversify. How do you get out of tobacco, and how do you transition into something else? And so, matter of fact, we've seen that with them transitioning from tobacco to more corn, to more soy, to more wheat. We've had individuals to go into cattle. We even have some individuals who are doing bison. So what's happened is our farmers, who are very smart people, as you know, farmers are scientists, they are economists, they're just brilliant people. And so our farmers had to look at other ways to provide for their families, and that's what they were able to do by going into other areas of agriculture outside of tobacco.
I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you about the Lumbee tribe itself. Congress recognized the tribe in 1956 in one way, but in another way they didn't confer federal recognition. Where does that stand, and kind of maybe tell our viewers about that history?
Well, yes, sir. Well, you are correct. In matter of fact, June 7, 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Lumbee Act, which pretty much said that we were the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, and at the same time, because it was the era of termination, they said that we could not receive any services, and so we are the only tribe that is in this legal limbo in the entire country. And there were, I think, 2 other tribes that had similar legislation passed during the era of termination. Both of those tribes have had their legislation since reversed to where they have full federal recognition. And so we continue to push for Congress to right what they did wrong. And I continue to reach out to Indian country, because, to be honest with you, Mark, this is a huge issue that Indian country should really rally around. I mean, the fact that we are a tribe that's stuck in this legal limbo is something that I would think Indian country would want to stand up and say, hey, United States Congress, hey, United States federal government, let's correct this wrong, because you guys got it wrong, and you know you did, and we're long past the era of termination, Mark. We're long past the era of termination. So I would hope that tribal leaders across this country that's going to hear this will definitely assist us with getting our full federal recognition, which we are currently sitting in the United States Senate at this time, and we are hoping for a vote very soon. As you know, it did pass the House last year, and so hopefully we can get a favorable push before the end of this Congress.
Chairman Lowry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I appreciate you and all the work that you and your team do to inform Indian country. Thank you.
Sierra Teller Ornelas is Navajo and the executive producer of the NBC series called Rutherford Falls. Season 2 will be launching on June 16th on the streaming service Peacock. ICT editor Jordan Bennett-Begay caught up with her at Res 2022 for some insights on Season 2. Let's take a look.
Well, thank you for joining here today. Season 2 of Rutherford Falls is coming out. Can you tell us what to expect?
I'm so excited. It comes out June 16th on Peacock. And yeah, we're really leaning into the comedy this year. We're doing a lot of Native romance. I'm so excited. We have 2 new Native characters, Gunadidio Horn, who played Dear Woman on Reservation Dogs, and then Dallas Goldtooth from the 1491s and also from Reservation Dogs. And they're just really hilarious additions to the cast. We kind of get to see all of our favorite characters. And just see how they sort of kind of carve out their own legacies that we sort of blew up in Season 1.
Oh, amazing. And are there any lessons on Season 1, I guess, on the behind the scenes that you're taking in, or that you took into Season 2?
Yeah, definitely. I think, we had so much to do. I think there was like an urgency in season 1 because, you know, we were the technically first Native American sitcom. And when we were making it, it was like, are we actually getting to do this? And so there was this like urgency to kind of put every single thing we could think of that we wanted to do in it. And I think in the second season, we allowed, I think, the characters and the stories to kind of breathe a little bit and also just really get to like explore them as people and see those human interactions. So we get to see a lot of like Terry and his wife or Regan dating and things like that.
Yeah, and that's what I really love with Rutherford Falls, because I think it's really difficult to hit a happy medium of you want to reach a Native audience and also a non-Native audience. I mean, was that a struggle at all in trying to create this show?
Not exactly. I think we wanted it to be like, is this something, if you were a Native person, you'd be like, oh my God, this is awesome that I'm getting to watch this. And then what was the funniest version of a story, you know? So we wanted it to feel authentic and funny, and those were our two sort of guiding lights that we chased, and making sure that like Native people were always in on the joke, because I feel like for hundreds of years, or 100 years, Native people have been the joke on television and in film, and so that was like a really important thing to us.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. What about, I mean, yeah, your writer's room grew tremendously from just the social posts I see online. I can imagine what the conversations are like, the jokes, all the ideas. Can you provide like some insight on what that's like, on where the script goes or how that's rewritten or edited?
Yeah, definitely. Like we have a half Native writers room. We added a couple Native writers this year, AZ Dungy and Dash Turner, and we lost one unfortunately. But we really try to figure out from our lives. We kind of the first few weeks talk about like what have you had. With COVID, like a lot of people went home for a while, so a lot of us have stories from visiting our families. A lot of us will have the same thing that we're going through, and if it kind of excites us and we have a lot of anecdotes about that thing, like a lot of us tried to get home site leases this year and had struggles, and so that's one of the storylines of season 2, and how it feels like so absurd to try to do this thing of like that version of Land Back, right? Like it's like so difficult. And what are the comedy versions of it, but what is also like the authentic version of how that experience can feel for us. And so when we find a story idea that we're all excited by, then we'll kind of chase that story and see where it goes.
Oh, that's amazing. I really, that's the thing about these shows are coming up. And 2 shows in the last year, everybody really resonated with those, especially young people. And I was curious, what advice you have for future writers?
Oh my God, I know, it just feels so wide open. Like I was talking to Sterling and we were saying how it's crazy that our kids are growing up in a world where there's 2 Native television shows, because like there were 0 when we were growing up.
Yeah, or they were terrible.
They were terrible. It's like Dr. Quinn. And so, I think that right now is such a beautiful time that I think all Indigenous people have an incredible story to tell. There's a line in season 1 that says, the history of Indigenous people is the greatest story never told. And I truly believe that. And I think that there are so many amazing like Native kids on TikTok making incredible media, and I'm so excited to see like what this next generation does. My only advice to them is keep doing it, keep putting it in front of people, and just keep telling your story.
No, and I think when you say it's storytelling rather than writing, it becomes a little more exciting, because I know there's some young kids who don't want to write.
No, and I come from a long line of storytellers. My mother's maiden name is Teller because that is what her great-grandfather did, and so I feel like Indigenous storytelling and television writing are linked together in this very organic way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then now you're a writer and also a showrunner.
Yes.
What is it like to be a showrunner? Because you've been in the industry for a while just working at this.
Yeah, I had a lot of bosses, showrunners, and I'd pitch songs or I'd pitch ideas, and some of them would get in and some of them wouldn't. And being at this position, it's been so great to be like, we want the Hallucination to be co-composers. We want Bethany Yellowtail's clothing, we want Jamie Kuma's clothing. We want all these very specific beaters. It has to be this beater. And it's like we did a Halloween episode and we did a lot of Easter egg costumes, and we were like, it has to look like this, and we like bringing up photos and things, and so it really is just incredible to have all these stories and then to have this platform to tell them.
And like you said, bringing in, you were saying on the panel earlier here at the Reservation Economics Summit that you got to bring in these other fashion designers and their apparel, rework artists, and even actors, and I think that's just incredible to culminate to this one season. Well, now in season 2.
Yeah. No, we do an episode where Regan goes to a gallery, and it's an artist, an Afro-Indigenous artist named Natalie Ball, and her work is so beautiful, and we were able to get a lot of pieces from different museums and collectors, and she was like, this feels like a real art opening. And so it's just kind of nice to champion not just our stories, but our art and our culture and our music.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I mean, did you have anything you wanted to add that I didn't?
No, just hoping everyone will watch Rutherford Falls Season 2, June 16th on Peacock.
A long-standing battle over subsistence rights is going to court. That's the gathering of food from nature for nutrition and cultural traditions. The federal government is suing the state of Alaska over fish openings on the Kuskokwim River. ICT national correspondent Jacqueline Estes joins us to talk about it. And you can read more at her story at IndianCountryToday.com. Search for Federal Government Sues Alaska Over Subsistence. Welcome, Jacqueline.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
So tell us the basic story of this lawsuit.
Well, this is about fishing on the Kuskokwim River, which it's the nation's longest free-flowing river, and it cuts through the Yukon Delta National Wildlife Refuge. Historically, the area is very rich in wildlife, and historically, hundreds of thousands of salmon have returned to the Kuskokwim River to spawn. And lately the numbers of kings and chums have been plummeting. So federal and state regulations call for them to limit the fisheries to subsistence users. The problem is that they define subsistence user differently. The state calls all Alaskans subsistence users, whereas the federal government, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in this instance, limits subsistence users to local rural residents. And so you have this clash.
Well, and this really comes out of the whole Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act that forced kind of people to Alaska wanted to have a definition that basically did not include Alaska Natives.
Well, so this is something that could have been dealt with, and people think should have been dealt with under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, but it was controversial, and so it was left out. ANCSA included a provision that said we're going to have another law coming along here that'll deal with lands that need to go into conservation. The environmentalists were pushing under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, they were pushing to have lands made into parks and refuges. So that was dealt with in the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act of 1981. And it set it set the definition of subsistence users as local and rural, whereas the state constitution prohibits any restrictions or any privileges, I should say, to any certain group. And so you have two pieces of law that are in conflict with each other.
One other area, I guess, of conflict, and this is a difference between tribes in the lower 48 and Alaska, is co-management, where with treaty rights, tribes are very much, and have been for a long time, co-managers of the resource. And in Alaska, there's been a pushback to that idea, even though it's happened anyway.
Well, this is one example of where that's actually happening. Let's see, what's it called? The Intertribal Fish Commission is made up of 33 tribes in the Yukon Kuskokwim region, and they work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on openings on the Kuskokwim River, and they've worked very closely. They've never, basically the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has followed the recommendations of all of the Fish Commission, and so it's an advisory group, but they've been given a lot of cooperative co-management authority. So that's been happening, and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game is really the outlier. The reason, what prompted the lawsuit is that the Department of Fish and Game has been having fish openings on the very same day that the federal government limited fisheries only to rural local users. And so on those very same days, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game has opened fisheries up to all users. And so that kind of triggered the lawsuit.
We only have about a minute left, but I want to ask you how to convey how important subsistence is to a family, particularly in a village in Alaska.
Well, you can't live in rural Alaska, I don't think. Villages would not survive without subsistence because the cost of everything has to get shipped in by plane or barge. And that raises the cost of food to, it's just astronomical. I mean, a dozen eggs is like $4.50 or something like that. So, and the price of gasoline is very high. So people really can't live without gathering food from the land. And people do, they gather hundreds of pounds of food every year from nature.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
My pleasure.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I'm Mark Trahan.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.